Vicky Ford, Conservative MEP for the East of England. What can the EU do to help in this Ebola crisis?
Well, one of the things I've been looking at is to see whether or not we can fast track some money that's already been committed for clinical trials and research into Ebola research now. So there's an urgent need, I understand, for looking at vaccines, looking at better treatments, and there's clinical work going on that. It needs to be upscaled. In the last Parliament and earlier this year, I led through this Parliament a commitment to developing countries' partnership work on clinical trials. So Europe working with sub-Saharan Africa, looking at infectious diseases. We've got a pot of money set aside for spending over the next 7 years. How can we fast track some of that now into this Ebola?
And of course, we're talking firstly about millions of pounds. It's a huge fund. And secondly, this kind of very high-tech work is carried out in places like Cambridge, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. There is a UK angle and a local angle for me here. So this pot of money is just over 600 million euros, about 600 million pounds, and it's money for working in partnership with the developing countries concerned. So it's not taking Western ethics and putting them onto sub-Saharan African countries, but at the same point it's looking at diseases which may come back and affect us in Europe. So for example, TB, which we thought was eradicated, is it coming back? So there clearly could be an international impact back on the west of Ebola if we can't control it better. That's obviously the concern of the WHO and others. So therefore it is a disease that affects us back at home.
So to pick up on the work being done in Cambridge, what's the potential there when it comes to Ebola, and how perhaps could the EU help with that?
So, for example, in Cambridgeshire we have the home of the Bioinformatics Institute. This is where we look at how viruses mutate and to understand what's happening within the cells as they develop. And all the know-how built around the Human Genome Campus there already looks at diseases like malaria, how they mutate, diseases like Ebola, how they mutate. So that sort of understanding then which treatments are best to attack and kill off which mutations of the virus, all of that scientific processing, computer processing can happen in our own local economy in Cambridgeshire.
And you mentioned this huge pot of money that the EU has. What are you doing to ensure that there's a link made between that fund and this case, this Ebola case?
So we're writing to the Commissioner in charge to say, please can you look at fast tracking some of that money into Ebola now? And tomorrow in a debate in the Parliament, I will be asking MEPs to support the fast tracking of that money. It's money that's already committed. It's money that member states like the UK can draw down. So if our scientists want to get involved, they've got this idea, they can get involved in this partnership, and then this EU money will match fund the UK's own contribution. The UK is one of the countries which is most involved in this type of scientific research, and I hope it really will be able to stop this disease further before it spreads.
How crucial is this kind of funding? It's very expensive work. How important is it to get the go-ahead for funding like this from Europe for projects in Cambridge?
Okay. Well, these tend to be projects where people are working on international collaborative projects. So how important is it to us? If you look at diseases like TB, which we thought were eradicated but are now coming back. They're coming back with huge drug resistance. It's really important for us to be able to work in the countries where that's most prevalent and understand whether or not we can reduce it at its source before it starts becoming even more of a global problem again. Diseases like malaria, which had been eradicated in Europe because of climate change, are coming back again. So for our future, it is really important that we work globally and don't just say that's an African problem, we can leave it alone. And again, diseases like Ebola, if they get out of control, even worse, that could pose a risk. It's not there at the moment, but we do need to understand better how we could cut this off at source, and that's having better vaccines, better treatments, etc.
A word about the timing. How soon could this money become available if you get the go-ahead to what you want here?
Well, clearly with any European money, I want to make sure that there's still proper controls on how it's spent. Okay, so what I'm asking the Commission to do is look at how quickly can they fast track while still making sure that all the ethics of the trials are sound, and that there is still sound accountability for where the money's gone. So it's really looking at, can we fast track, the money's already committed, how quickly can we get it working on the ground while still having the controls on it.